Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig. Our guest today is Heather Ryan, Democratic candidate for Congress in the 1st District. We were hoping she wouldn't be alone. We were hoping the incumbent, Representative Ed Whitfield, would be with us. To that end, we made 2 attempts to contact him. My colleague and sometimes guest on the program, Professor Gerald Watkins, called Congressman Whitfield's office here in Paducah twice, left a message, didn't hear back. Congressman Whitfield, you're most welcome to come on the show at a later date, and Ms. Ryan has already said that she would come back again and maybe we could discuss or debate the issues. And so again, the invitation to you, sir, is standing and it is open. Meanwhile, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this.
Ed Whitfield is a well-entrenched incumbent.
Indeed.
He has a mountain of money and you have a molehill.
If you call it that.
The last 3 cycles, he has won by 60% or better. Who's going to win?
You know, I would love to say that I'm going to win hands down, but I'm a realist. I know what the odds are. I'm a political scientist by trade as well. So, you know, we're very realistic and we understand that, 95% of the time incumbents are reelected. But this is our year. So we know what the odds are. We know that he has more money than we could ever hope to raise. But we also know that this gas at $4 a gallon, no health care for 50 million people, unions being just crushed and our jobs moving to other countries and him endorsing those policies. This is our year. So I would love to say hands down we're going to win, but it's a tough battle, and we're going to do everything in our power do everything in our power to win. And so, realistically, he might win, but hopefully, we will win.
This district is different than it was, say, 30 or 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's sort of a debate. Has the 1st District realigned permanently Republican? Democrats we've talked to, some on this program say it's those Republican counties in the East that's added in. But I've looked at the numbers. If you remove those Republican counties, Whitfield still wins. That the Republicans have made huge inroads here in the Jackson Purchase, the former Gibraltar democracy. How do you propose to turn those trends around? The trends have been Republican. You can look at the numbers. Mm-hmm. Whitfield actually, until the last election, had increased his victory margin every time. It was slightly less, but still above 60%. So how do you fight numbers like that?
Well, first of all, Whitfield used to be a Democrat until it served its purposes to be a Republican. So it's not as though people are necessarily Republicans. I mean, 63% are Democrats, or they claim to be Democrats. It's the social issues that the Republicans have really taken hold of and really almost won the battle on a lot of these issues. They use the same issues over and over every election year. You've got abortion, you've got gay rights, and you've got gun rights. Those are the 3 major issues that they use socially to make people look the other way and say, oh, I don't agree with any of these things that, I agree with the Republicans, so I'm going to vote against my own economic interest and vote with the social issues. But these are wedge issues that are very emotionally evoking issues that the Republicans use time and time again just to make people infuriated enough to go to the polls and vote against their own interests. The Republicans aren't pushing economic viability for the average person. They're not pushing the things like health care that we desperately need in the 1st District. They're scaring people. They're saying the terrorists are going to get you. We're going to have abortion on demand. We're going to take away your gun rights. None of this is true. But they don't really want you to think that. They want you to be scared so that you go to the polls and you say, well, the Republicans are more along whose lines I am. And it's just, unfortunately, it's worked. And that's what they use every time. I imagine that's what they'll use this time as well.
How often do you hear the social issues brought up on the campaign trail with
Constantly.
you?
Constantly. People call me in the middle of the night. I've gotten 10-30 calls asking me about my stance on abortion.
What is your stance on abortion?
Actually, I worked for a women's rights organization for 5 years. So my stance on abortion is that it is insulting for anybody to ever call anybody pro-abortion, because nobody is pro-abortion. And for the Republicans to say, oh, well, these people want abortion. Nobody wants abortion. We want to prevent unintended pregnancies, and that brings down the number of abortions. That's just a fact. Numerically, statistics back us up. Abstinence-only training fails. Cutting health care fails. These are the two biggest programs that Republicans consistently cut, yet they increase the number of abortions because they increase the number of unwanted pregnancies. So as long as we can decrease the number of unintended pregnancies, we can decrease the number of abortions. And that's what I think, that's the common ground. That's the common ground that everybody wants. And I don't think it should be a wedge issue. This should be a common sense issue. And that's where I am. I'm neither pro-choice or anti-abortion or whatever you want to call it, pro-life, whatever. I'm common sense. Common sense says that pro-education and pro-health care, that's the way to reduce the number of abortions, and that's what we need in this country.
The other social issues, guns. What's your view on guns?
Well, first of all, this is Kentucky. You're not going to take away people's guns. It's just silly. And the Supreme Court has already decided this issue for us. It's not an issue. The Supreme Court has said you have a right to guns. The Constitution says you have a right to guns. Now, just because the Republicans don't believe so much in the Constitution doesn't mean I don't. So I believe in the Constitution, and what the Constitution says is how we should abide.
Gay rights.
Again, Kentucky, not a big issue in Kentucky. You're not going to see Fred and George getting married on your back porch. It's just not an issue here. They may say that, the Democrats are gay rights, but that's just silly. I believe that everybody should be treated with a certain kind of dignity and respect, regardless of who they love or who they want to be with. We shouldn't discriminate against anyone, regardless of their race, color, creed, religion, or who they choose to share their life. But I just don't see gay marriage being an issue here, and I don't see it being an issue here anytime in the near future.
The other issues then, you get called at 10:30 about abortion. What else do people call you about or talk to you about on the campaign trail?
Probably the biggest thing they're fed up with is the economy, and that's our big shining hope right now for the Democrats, is for everybody, the voters, to realize this is an economic issue, and the Republicans are not working on your behalf economically. We have a huge economic crisis, and who put us there? Who put us in this economic crisis? Who made a profit off of $4 a gallon gas? Who did that? It wasn't me. I don't own stock in the oil and energy companies. I don't get contributions from the oil and energy companies. I certainly don't get contributions from pharmaceuticals or health insurance companies, so I'm not making a profit off of people not having health insurance because they can't afford it, or seniors not being able to afford their prescriptions because they're so expensive. I'm not making anything off of that. I'm also not making a profit off of people their houses foreclosing. That would be, unfortunately, the Republicans. They're the ones that put us there. So that's what I hear the most. People are really hurting. They're losing their homes. They can't afford to get to work. When we travel the district, it's by far the biggest expense is gasoline. So we feel it. We don't have health insurance, my husband and I. So we feel it more than any other politician, certainly, that I know. So that's probably people's biggest concern right now, over and above the social issues. So I'm hoping that that's what they're going to go to the polls. And remember, on the way to the polls, I passed a gas station and it said for whatever a gallon, and the Republicans put us there.
Mm-hmm. How much support are you getting from the Kentucky Democratic Party in your race?
Well, the KDP, it's a structure system. You've got your national party, and then you've got your Kentucky Democratic Party, and then you've got your local county parties. The county parties have been very good to us. Now, the Kentucky Democratic Party, they have a priority list. Just like any organization, they have a priority list. And so they say, these are the ones that are probably the most winnable. Now,
by being good to you, what do you mean? Giving money?
Money and support, saying, where are your signs? We want to help support you. We want to get out the vote. We want to volunteer for you. We want to call for you. That kind of stuff. That's what I mean by being good to us. Mm-hmm. The Kentucky Democratic Party has been good to us in other ways, not necessarily financially, because, as any corporation, as any entity, you have to weigh what's winnable, what's not, where should we spend our money, where shouldn't we. So I understand that. But they did give us a platform from which to speak. So at the Democratic Convention, I was able to speak. I was the only congressional candidate, so I was very grateful for that. So it's these additional opportunities that we wouldn't normally have received. So I am grateful for the help that we have received from them.
Well, I have noticed that in the 2nd District, David Boswell, this group, the Red to Blue group, mm-hmm. has gotten behind him Do you wish they would get behind you?
It's a double-edged sword. That's the DCCC, red to blue. And the DCCC has said they do not plan on getting behind us because we just don't have the budget. You have to have literally $1 million for them to even look at you twice. Otherwise, they won't even take your calls. So, in one way, yes, I wish they would get behind us because it'd be great to have that kind of national recognition. But on the other hand, then they take over your campaign. If they're going to spend money on you, they want to be able to control that money. And we have such a non-traditional, fun campaign, and we're really out there and we're really just calling it like it is, that they would probably want us to pull that back a lot. So it's a double-edged sword. Do I want them to? Yeah, but do I not want them to? Yeah. So, if they ever came knocking on my door, I'd probably really consider it. But, I'm not depressed that they're not knocking.
What made you decide to run? We were all watching, those of us who like to watch politics, to see if a named Democrat would toss his or her hat in the ring. There was a rumor that it would possibly be Pruitt, the judge over in Hickman County, and he didn't. And then all of a sudden, right at the last minute, your name pops up. What made you decide to do this?
Well, I was one of those people that was watching and waiting and listening and seeing what was going to happen in the first congressional, and no one came forward. And then I had my encounter with Senator McConnell, and suddenly I had a whole lot of time on my hands. So, we had a week after I lost my job at the Maiden Alley Cinema because of Mitch McConnell. I had a week to decide before the filing deadline, do I want to challenge this man or not? Should we let him go unopposed? Should we allow the process to completely go unchallenged? And so I did speak to Mr. Pruitt, and he was kind of iffy. And I said, well, brother, if you're not going to take up the fight, I'm willing to. And so we did. We drove up to Frankfurt on the Monday before the Tuesday filing, and we filed, and we've been charging straight ahead ever since.
And again, you touched on, I guess, the first controversy was the Maiden Alley. They, of course, maintain that they were not pressured by Senator McConnell to fire you. You say otherwise. And does this come up on the campaign trail, or is that
constantly?
Forgotten?
It constantly comes up, yes. And I'm about tired of telling the story because I've heard it a million times, but so many people haven't heard the story. So, to the point of ad nauseum, I tell the story over and over. But indeed, they're going to deny that they had anything to do with Senator McConnell making phone calls.
And they do deny it.
Of course, they're not stupid. That's the lawsuit waiting to happen. If they said, yeah, Mitch McConnell called us. But they admitted it to me, and they admitted it more than once, and they admitted it on tape, and they didn't know they were being taped. So where's the real truth? I mean, does the truth happen when you don't know you're being taped? Probably. Does the truth happen when you don't think anybody else is listening? Yeah, it does. But when you're on record, oh no, we had nothing to do with it, and Mitch McConnell had nothing to do with it. Mitch McConnell's been in power for 24 years for a very good reason. He's very good at what he does, and he's very manipulative and dirty politician, and I don't mind saying it.
He would disagree, I'm sure.
And I don't care.
And that's another thing I've heard. The fact that you are a long shot, and everyone knows that, people say that enables you to say things that another candidate might be more politic about. Do you see you sort of as Don Quixote tilting at windmills here? Sure.
But I don't mind being that long shot. I don't mind being the person that calls out the corrupt politicians for what they are. If it takes the long shot to call it out, and we get trounced, and I can't get hired in the city of Paducah anymore because I've burned all the Republican bridges, I'm okay with that. What are they going to do to me now? They've taken my job. Are they going to take my trailer next? I mean, really, what are they going to do? I'm not fearful of what they have left to do to me. They knew that I was the only person working in my family, but they didn't care. So what more can they do to me? So if I'm the person, if I'm the one, the anointed one, that has to say, look, these people are not working for your best interest, hopefully that's what it takes to catapult us into change. And even if I'm not the person, hopefully in the future, Mr. Whitfield, if he does win, will say, you know what, I have been lax on my responsibilities as a representative. Hopefully he'll get a clue.
Have you crossed paths with Congressman Whitfield on the campaign trail at any point?
Only a couple of times at the picnics, at the big events.
And it seems to me that basically what he's doing is what any entrenched incumbent does, Republican or Democrat, is if you have an opponent that is not considered to be tough, you ignore that opponent. They all did it. They all do it, Democrats, Republicans. Is that frustrating? I mean, how do you get back at that? How do you jump up and down and say, look, I'm over here?
Well, there's two sides to that. And in one way, sure, it's frustrating because I couldn't get a debate with this man to save my life because he just laughs us off. But on the other hand, these guys can be really mean. So, they can make Mother Teresa look like she was selling drugs to the children of Calcutta. I mean, really, they can be really, really mean. So are they going to run commercials against me saying that I'm a horrible person, or are they going to ignore me? I prefer them to ignore me, so I don't mind so much him ignoring me. If he comes on different shows or different programs or different events and debates me, gravy. I'd love it. But I also don't mind him ignoring me.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. If you were the incumbent, would you debate?
I'd be ignoring them as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
But
politics.
see, it's different too. I'm not the person he is. I don't mind debating, and I don't mind talking about the issues. He has a much easier time not talking about the issues, not claiming responsibility for the Republican agenda. I'm a totally different person. I don't mind saying I'm a Democrat. I don't mind saying I have a heart, and I am not afraid to stand up for what's right for working people. I'm a totally different animal than he is. So I don't know. I'd probably ignore them. I may not. I might want to take on the fight.
Well, as I said, pretty typically, it doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat, wherever you are, if you do have an opponent that is not a heavyweight, I guess, you ignore them. That's part of it. I suspect you've discovered on this campaign how big this district is. What is the farthest from Paducah you've traveled in getting your vote, your message out?
Actually, the farthest I've traveled is Ashland because I'm the president of the Democratic Women's Club.
But that's not in our district.
No, it's on the other side of the state. So far, the farthest we've gone is Allen County. We'll go up through the Dragon's Tail toward the end of the campaign. As you said earlier, it's a heavily Republican area up through the Dragon's Tail. So, it's a strategy. You have to weigh where you go, what you do, when you do it. So the farthest we've gone so far is Allen County, but we will go up through the Dragon's Tail around Bowling Green here before too long.
Now, politicians on a national scale have jet planes they fly around in. John McCain has the Straight Talk Express, fancy bus. What is your campaign vehicle?
We call our campaign vehicle the War Wagon. It's a 1995 Ford Aerostar, which we purchased from the Disabled American Veterans, of which I'm a member, for $700. And you couldn't miss it if you tried. I mean, it's one of the most distinguishable cars in the 1st District. It's got the old DAV stickers on it, and of course we write on the windows. Right now the message says, in the paint, gas equaled 146 when George Bush took office. And then on the back, of course, it says, are you better off? And that's our message. Are you better off now? Because if you are, by all means, support the incumbent because he's been there the whole time. But if you're not, we need change, and that's what we're here for.
Getting back to how campaigns are helped, money is what it's all about. I know a consultant, and he just flat will tell you, to win a congressional race, you have to raise X amount of money. And in this particular race, he and I were talking about, he was right. The fellow who didn't raise X amount of dollars was beaten pretty heavily. What about that? The reality of money. I mean, money buys television time, radio time, newspaper advertising.
Oh, nobody's more attuned than a nonprofit fundraiser to how important money is to your cause. And unfortunately, we'll never have $1 million like Mr. Whitfield does. And if we did, he'd have $2 million. If we had $2 million, he'd have $4 million. He'd have whatever he would need to have in order to outspend us. We'll never be able to outspend him. So instead, what we do is we use non-traditional forms of advertising. We don't get a lot of press. It's a pretty conservative press area. So we always have our internet. We have our e-newsletter. We have press releases just don't work that well here. So we have YouTube videos that we do throughout the campaign trail. They're much less expensive forms of advertising now than there used to be. We probably won't be able to drop a lot of direct mail pieces, but we should be able to advertise on cable. And if we hit them hard enough with the ads we have, then hopefully people will talk about it and think about who they want to vote for.
Yeah, you were talking about YouTube, and of course to my generation, that's just, well, I have a 15-year-old, he understands about that, his dad doesn't. But that is an interesting aspect of political life, is the internet. And all candidates have a website. Even minor candidates do. How can you tell if your internet and YouTube stuff is working? Can you tell?
Yeah, you can see how many hits you have. You can certainly see the responses you get from comments. You know, I like to say my theory is if I'm riling them up, I'm doing something right. And so far, it seems like I'm riling them up pretty good. So we must be doing something right. Your website, you can see on the back end how many people have hit, where they've come from, how long they stayed on your pages, what they clicked through to. So technologically, it's pretty advanced now. You can see what's working and what's not, and what's resonating and what's not.
And that's interesting because in watching, it's too early to tell how this will affect politics, because if you go back in Kentucky, it was the personal contact. Then it became television. And now this internet is coming into it, and who knows in 15, 20 years how that will lead. Your background, how did you come to Western Kentucky?
Oddly enough, I came here specifically to run a congressional campaign in this very district against this very opponent. It just happens to be a strange twist of fate that I'm running now.
Eric Strike was the candidate, right?
Yes, actually he's pronounced his name right, yes.
And he was on the program recently talking about his
right.
Dr. Phil adventures and other adventures in television land, that sort of thing. So you're from where originally?
Originally I'm from Iowa. And I joined the Navy, moved to San Diego, that's where I was stationed. Finished up college on the GI Bill back in Iowa, then moved to Washington, D.C., worked as a nonprofit fundraiser for 5 years, met Eric Strike. He said, oh, I've always wanted to run for Congress. And so I did some opposition research for him, and he offered, hey, why don't you be my campaign manager? And I said, oh, Kentucky, all right. So we moved here.
And your husband is a former student here at the college.
Former student of yours, yes.
Yes, he was, way back when. We won't get into how far back that was, but
yeah, he was just talking about that.
I had more hair back then.
That's exactly what he said.
I'm sure he did, and I had less pounds too. But he probably was genteel enough not to say that.
No, he didn't mention that.
That was very kind of him. I do appreciate that. Are you enjoying this?
This is the best time I've ever had. I have to give a big shout out to Mitch McConnell, because it's a great time. You know, thanks Mitch. Thanks Mitch. it's so much fun traveling the district and seeing people and talking to people and, you know, meeting different aspects of life and, you know, telling people, you know, I am nobody special. I am just like you, and I totally understand where you're coming from. And it for some reason it resonates with people, and I'm having the best time ever. So thanks, Mitch.
Do you have a percentage of vote you would, in other words, even if you don't win, do you have a percentage that's, okay, if I make this percentage, I feel like I've done well, or have you got a number out there anywhere?
Well, I'd like to at least get as much as the last election. I'd like to at least get as much as 40% in a year like this, in a presidential election year, not an off-cycle year, which is what the last election was. So I'd like to at least get the 40% mark.
Well, when I know you at Fancy Farm, for example, did Mr. Whitfield say anything to you?
No. Mr. Whitfield.
How close to him were you?
Close enough for him to hit me, so that must have been good that he didn't. No, we were, you know, he was on the other end of the stage from me. So the Republicans sat on one side and the Democrats sat on the other. The only thing he said about me was to the governor and asked why I'm running against him rather than Mitch McConnell. And then he moved on and bashing Democrats in general, which is, you know, to be expected from the Republicans. But we didn't, as Democrats, put us here in this predicament in which we find ourselves. So, you know,
but that's got to be frustrating. I mean, you're up here talking about the Republicans and talking about Whitfield, and what does he do? Just look off the other way? I mean, does he just ignore you?
I don't know. He's always behind me, so I don't know what he's doing. He could be picking his nose for all I know. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going through his mind. I mean, really, if I had one question to ask him, I'd ask him, how does he look in the mirror and know that he's done nothing for the people of the district for 13 going on 14 years? How does he do that? You know, if anything was running through his mind, I'd like to know if that's what's running through his mind. Is that what he's thinking? Because I'd like to know the answer.
Well, I would hope he would come on the program and we could ask him that, because as much fun as we're having here, it'd be a lot more fun if he were here too.
It most assuredly would.
Well, I mean, really and truly, and I think one of the purposes of a college is to provide both sides of an issue. And it's again, when it's one-sided, and maybe he'll come. It'd be terrific if he did. In fact, we could even arrange a bigger format than this if we wanted to. So, in the event that you do come up short on November the 4th, what are your plans at that point?
Oh, we have a couple of Plan Bs. You know, the last time I was this involved and this entrenched in election, we didn't have a Plan B. So I've learned that it's always good to have a Plan B. So we've got a couple of different businesses that we'll probably pursue. It's not as though I'm real employable as a nonprofit fundraiser in the city of Paducah anymore. Thanks, Mitch.
Do you plan to stay in Paducah?
I do. We like Paducah. It's a great little community. We love McCracken County. We're very active politically here, so I can't imagine leaving. And we actually own a place here. Unlike Mr. Whitfield, we actually live in the district. It's a weird thing that the Constitution says you have to do to be a representative, you know.
And you have a campaign headquarters?
We do. We have a campaign headquarters on Clarks River Road. We just opened last month.
In an old, what was it, an old store or something?
I think it's been a little bit of old everything. Oh my gosh, my phone's ringing.
All right. Well, that happens.
It's my Barack Obama. Listen.
This is Barack Obama. I'm fired up and ready to go. Answer the call and help change America.
Is that the most awesome thing ever or what?
That's pretty impressive.
And it's the KDP calling me.
Well, there you are. Well, who knows? We've got just a few more minutes to go, and maybe they've got some money for you.
That's it. I'm sure
afterwards.
that's entirely what it is.
That's it. So, any final thoughts? Time is running out. I've been given the 2-minute warning, like in pro football. Anything else to say?
You know, I just have to encourage people to get out and vote on November the 4th. You know, I'm not anybody special. I'm a veteran of the United States Navy. I'm a mother of 2 daughters. I'm a wife. We have, you know, the most I've ever made my entire life is $40,000 a year. We're nothing extraordinary. We don't have health insurance. We get the struggles of everyday people in the 1st District and in America. So I'm nobody special. I'm just an ordinary person, but this is an extraordinary time. And so what I ask from everybody is to get out and vote and really think about their choices when they get out and vote on November the 4th.
That's very. Anything else you want to add? You have 1 more minute.
I have a whole minute.
You do.
Oh, I can talk for a whole
You
nother
can talk
minute?
for a whole other minute.
Gosh.
I gave you 2 minutes. You just used 1.
Oh, I guess go to our website at www.ryanforkentucky.com. There's always something cool going on there. We have the best volunteer person that does our website for us. Clay, he's down in Murray. He does a fabulous job. He keeps it fresh and up to date. And there's a blog on there. You can talk to other supporters. We have our new yard signs, so you can always stop by and get a yard sign.
I saw your yard signs at Fancy Farm. They were who spray
Those
painted
are handmade.
those? Yes, I could tell.
Yeah, my fingers still hurt from that. The handmade ones at Fancy Farm we made in our front lawn. But we do have real plastic yard signs now.
So I mean, how did you make those? You just
Actually, we took campaign signs from a candidate who lost a previous election.
And who was that?
Craig Fisher.
Okay.
And we flipped them inside out, and we stapled them, and we spray painted them, and slipped them back over the
looked like
wickets.
a stenciling. Looked like a
It was a
stenciling.
stencil.
It
We
was.
bought the stencils and just taped them together and stenciled them. That's the best kind of campaign. I mean, really, do you have to have money for that? Those are refuse, so those are going to be thrown
Recycling.
away. We are recycling.
There
We
we
are
are.
the green campaign.
And we're out of time. My guest today was Heather Ryan, and again, she's willing to come back, and I'd love to get Congressman Whitfield on as well, and we'd have twice the fun we had today. I'm Barry Craig. We will see you next time.